아빠도 기지가 많네.
나는 못 탄다.
아, 내가 죽게 왜 죽어?
야, 나가서.
아들 아가씨 우리 아버지. 잘못했습니다. 아, 했지.
The story started with a young boy named Jiho, who lived alone with his father, Woojin, because his mother, a woman named Suah, had passed away. However, even though she was gone, Jiho still kept a colorful storybook that always reminded him of her. And this book told a tale about a mother penguin who died, but eventually returned to her family when the rainy season arrived. It was because of that story that he constantly waited for the rain to come, since he believed it was a promise that his mother would finally come home. A year later, Jiho's father, Woojin, continued to raise Jiho on his own without finding a new wife. Every morning at 3 a.m., he would wake up and ride his bicycle to work. At work, his job was a very simple job as a janitor at a swimming pool, yet he worked really hard to provide for his son. On the other hand, whenever Jiho woke up and found the house quiet, he would usually move into his mother's room and sit inside her closet for a while just to smell her scent and feel close to her. He would also check the weather forecast every single day, waiting for the rainy season to begin, and he would tell his father not to worry, as he was certain that his mother would return just like the mother penguin in her book. Meanwhile, there was a woman named Hyunjung who actually had feelings for Woojin. However, Woojin kept his heart closed and remained uninterested in anyone except his late wife, especially because he knew that the swimming coach, Choi, liked Hyunjung. Somewhere else, there was a man named Honggu, and he was Woojin's best friend, and that day in his bakery, he seemed happy to serve his customer, whom he had a crush on. It was said that Jiho would often visit his shop because he saw him as a fun uncle. That day, during his visit, Jiho mentioned that there was an upcoming relay race at school, but he knew that he couldn't ask his father to join, knowing he was sick. It was then revealed that Woojin actually suffered from a brain tumor, a condition that caused him to suddenly faint if he became too exhausted. Long story short, the day of the race finally arrived, and Jiho was ready to race with Honggu. However, as the race was about to begin, a bully from Jiho's class approached him and noticed Honggu standing nearby. Then, seeing how high Honggu pulled up his pants, made them think that he had incredibly long legs and would be very fast in the race. Fearing they might lose, the bully told Jiho that he wasn't allowed to race because Honggu wasn't his real father. However, Woojin suddenly arrived at the school and decided to join the race with Jiho. The race finally began, and Woojin ran really fast on the track, while on the side of the track, Honggu was very worried about what might happen to his friend. However, despite his condition, Woojin did not want to see his son feel sad, so he ran with all his strength to win the match, yet as he almost reached the finish line, his vision suddenly began to blur. So, he began to stumble and lose his balance before fainting. In the end, he didn't finish the race, and he only made his son and best friend worried about him. Back in their simple home, Woojin and Jiho continued their quiet life, and every time he had free time, Woojin would often spend his time watching old videos of his wife. Then, one day, Jiho looked out the window and saw that the rain had finally started to fall, so he immediately ran outside and asked Woojin to come along to welcome his mother home. They then ran toward an abandoned train station, following the tracks through the rain. There, Jiho wasted no time looking inside the building, but his mother was nowhere to be seen. However, even though they didn't find her there, Jiho refused to go back because he truly believed his mother would arrive with the rain. On the other hand, Woojin was afraid that his son would catch a cold, so he tried to take him home. However, as they reached the train tunnel, Woojin stopped because he saw a woman sitting there. He then slowly approached the figure, and as they got closer, Jiho asked if it was his mother, while Woojin's heart pounded with fear that it might be a ghost. But Jiho didn't care at all and ran forward without any fear. He approached the woman and called her mother. Then, as the woman showed her face, Woojin was shocked to see that the woman actually looked exactly like his wife, Suah. At that moment, Jiho proudly told his father that his mother had kept her promise. She had returned with the rain. Unfortunately, Suah had lost her memory, and she did not recognize Jiho, let alone Woojin. But seeing her condition, Woojin decided to take her home. Then, once they reached home, Jiho immediately showed her their old photos to help her remember. On the other hand, Woojin was still very confused, but deep down he felt incredibly happy, thinking that his wife had really returned. He decided to act naturally so that his wife would not feel scared or leave the house, but he also asked Jiho to keep her return a secret. He warned his son not to let anyone else know so that she would stay with them until her memories returned. That night, Woojin felt very restless. He was so overwhelmed that he even went into Jiho's room just to make sure that Suah was breathing and that she was real. Seeing his family together again gave Woojin a new sense of energy, so he worked harder than ever at the pool, hoping to finish early and rush back home just so he could spend more time with Suah. That morning, Suah showed how much she cared for Jiho, as she jokingly teased that Jiho was just like his father because he always forgot to button his clothes correctly, and she said that loud enough so that Woojin would hear her as she noticed that the zipper on his pants was open. After that, Jiho kissed his mother on the cheek and ran outside. Woojin was about to do the same, but afraid that it would scare Suah, who still didn't recognize him, he decided to just kiss Suah's picture on the wall. Later, while Suah was cleaning the house, she found a purse inside one of the drawers, and inside was a wedding ring. Then, when she slipped it on her finger, she saw that it fit perfectly, meaning it was actually hers. Shortly after, Jiho showed up as he decided to skip school for the day because he missed his mother too much to leave her side. They then spend their day playing games and talking. After dinner, Woojin watched his wife coming from the bathroom after taking a shower, and he felt the urge he hadn't felt for so long, so he followed her and offered to move Jiho to another room so they could sleep together, but Suah said that wasn't necessary because she wanted to sleep with Jiho. Instead, she told Woojin to take off his shirt. Upon hearing that, Woojin quickly took his pants off, thinking he would do it with his wife, but it turned out that Suah simply wanted to treat the bruises on his back. While she helped him, Suah asked Woojin to tell the story of how they first met, so Woojin began his story. He explained that they had been in the same class for 3 years during school. Suah was the best student with the highest grades in the entire school, while he was a star athlete on the swimming team. Their story began during a physical education class when he helped her to swim because she couldn't, and that was when Woojin began to have a crush on her. Honggu even tried to help him figure out how to get closer to her. One day, while the teacher was leading a dance lesson, the teacher noticed that Woojin kept making mistakes with the movements, and after watching him closely, the teacher realized the problem was that Woojin was left-handed. So, to help him, the teacher then looked for another left-handed student to be his partner and chose Suah, who turned out to be left-handed as well. Then, as they danced, Woojin felt so nervous that he acted very clumsily during the dance. He accidentally hit Suah's nose until it bled, and as he tried to help her, he accidentally touched her chest, making her really mad. Since then, they never talked ever again until the end of the school year. Sometime later, Honggu asked Woojin loudly why he had loved Suah for 3 years without ever talking to her. Suah, who happened to be nearby, heard the whole thing, so she walked over to them. It turned out that she gave Woojin the school year's book and told him to write his message in that book. Then, after Woojin wrote something on it, Suah accidentally walked away with his pen. Years later, during their first summer break after starting college, Woojin tried to call Suah. He told himself that he only wanted to ask about the pen she had taken during graduation, yet the moment he heard her voice, he became so flustered that he hung up without saying a word. Then, after the summer passed, he wanted to try again during the winter break, but then he backed down because he received his notice for 2 years of mandatory military service instead. 2 years later, Woojin finally tried to call her again, but just like before, his hand reflexively reached to hang up the moment he heard her voice. However, this time he failed because Honggu was standing right behind him, and he grabbed his hand and stopped him from ending the call. At that moment, Woojin finally talked with Suah for the first time in years, and they decided to meet so that Suah could return his pen. The next day, Woojin finally went to meet Suah, and when they met, Suah still acted quite cool and indifferent, yet she had been willing to stand and wait for him under the hot sun. After that, when Woojin asked why she didn't wait inside with a drink, Suah simply replied that since they had agreed to meet right there, she stayed put. Even though they were finally together, they spent most of their time in silence because they were both so nervous. However, when Suah was about to leave, Woojin finally dared himself to ask her out for a date. During their meal, Woojin noticed the waiter was wearing a bow tie, and that made him feel very embarrassed since he was wearing one too. However, despite the awkwardness, he was happy because it was the first time he had ever eaten with the woman he had loved for years. After they finished eating, the two of them acted shyly while waiting for the bus. Then, when the first bus arrived, Suah stood still, as if she were waiting for something else. She even let several buses pass by until the very last bus of the night finally arrived. In the end, she finally entered the bus. However, just a moment later, everyone on the bus was amazed by something, as it turned out that Woojin was running after the bus really fast. The bus eventually stopped, and he entered the bus. He then asked Suah if he could write her a letter, and she allowed him. She then shared a romantic moment, and everyone on the bus could only think that they were a couple. Back in the present, while he was at work, Woojin saw a news report saying that the rainy season would last longer than usual, and this news made him smile brightly, which left Hyunjung, who happened to be there, feeling very curious about his sudden change in mood. Meanwhile, at home, Sua noticed a small cabin in front of the house, and driven by curiosity, she decided to check what was inside. However, the door was locked, but then she remembered the key she had found before inside the purse with the ring. She then took it, and it turned out to be the right key for the room. Inside, he saw many drawings of Woojin and Jiho. Later that day, when Woojin returned home from work, Jiho told him that his mother had just cleaned his ear, and he immediately led Woojin to lie down by Sua's thigh so she could clean his ear too. Later that night, Woojin was suddenly startled awake by a loud shout. When he checked outside, it turned out to be Honggu, who had arrived at the house wearing a penguin costume. Seeing him there, Woojin panicked because he was still keeping his wife a secret from him. However, Sua soon showed up, and Honggu was so shocked to see her that he thought that he was seeing a ghost. Of course, this confused Sua, but Woojin quickly convinced her that Honggu was just drunk. Once things calmed down, Sua approached Woojin and asked him to finish his story of their past. Woojin then continued, explaining that back then, at one point after they dated, they had gone to see a movie together at the cinema. Then, during the film, Woojin tried to reach out and hold Sua's hand, but he accidentally touched someone else's leg instead. After that, while they were waiting for their ride later that night, Sua shyly tucked her hand into Woojin's jacket pocket, and Woojin put his hands inside too. This was the very first time they held hands, and listening to the story caused Sua's memories to return slowly. Eventually, Woojin took Sua to a special spot on top of a hill to enjoy the view of the city. Then, while Sua looked out at the lights, Woojin leaned in, and they finally shared a kiss. As her memories continued to return, Sua eventually put her wedding ring back on and lived happily with her family. It felt wonderful for Woojin and Jiho to have the person they loved back as if she had never died, but then, that happiness was cut short. One day, as they were walking home, Woojin suddenly collapsed and fainted. Shortly after, when he woke up, Sua asked what was really going on, and in that moment, Woojin finally told her the truth about his illness. He told her that back when they were dating, Woojin felt more motivated than ever after receiving a gift from Sua, so he practiced swimming constantly without taking any breaks, but he suddenly lost consciousness in the middle of the pool. He was then rushed to the hospital, and it was then that the doctor discovered he had a tumor in his brain. However, even though he took his medicine, his condition kept worsening, which caused him to become devastated, and he began to pull himself away from everyone. Even when Sua came to check on him, Woojin simply lied and told her that he didn't love her anymore just to push her away. Long story short, a year had passed since he cut Sua off. Yet Woojin still couldn't forget about Sua, so he eventually traveled to the city, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but his heart broke when he saw her with another man. He felt devastated that the woman he loved had moved on so easily, while he had struggled every day for a year just to let her go. However, a few months later, Woojin received a surprise phone call from Sua, who asked him to meet at a station, so he rushed to wait for her arrival. Then, as she finally arrived, she ran towards him and immediately hugged him while saying that they would marry, no matter what. Back in the present, during breakfast one morning, Jiho mentioned that he was performing in a school play and asked Sua to come watch him. However, Woojin was worried about this because if people saw her, they might think that she was a ghost. After breakfast, Sua finally found her old diary and read through everything she had written. But then, whatever she discovered inside those pages suddenly changed her, as she immediately started teaching Jiho how to be independent. She showed him how to cook, how to wash his own clothes, and how to handle chores around the house. Meanwhile, Woojin and Honggu went to the train tunnel with a plan to block it off, hoping that if they closed the tunnel, Sua would never be able to leave. Then, while they were working, Woojin got a call because Jiho had tried to wash a neighbor's car using laundry soap. Thankfully, the neighbor didn't ask for money because she felt sorry for Jiho, who lived without a mother. Later, when they walked home, Jiho cried and explained that his friend had told him that if he washed his friend's car, the rain would never stop, and he only did it because he wanted the rainy season to last forever so he could stay with his mother. That night, they celebrated Jiho's birthday together. However, even though it was a happy moment, they all secretly felt a deep sadness because they knew that their time together was running out. Sometime later, the school play finally arrived, and at that moment, Jiho felt sad because he didn't see his parents in the audience, even though his mother was actually outside waiting for his father, who was still busy at work. On the stage, all the students began to sing, but Jiho looked very discouraged. Then, after the song, each student gave a speech about their dreams. But then, as it was Jiho's turn, he didn't say anything about his dream. He instead tried to assure his mother that he can be independent. Suna, who had arrived and stood in the back of the crowd, heard everything and could only shed tears. At the same time, as this was happening, Woojin suddenly fainted at his workplace, while Sua stood still waiting for him. But then, she suddenly saw the sunlight breaking through the clouds, and she immediately understood that her time with Jiho and Woojin was about to end. Jiho noticed it too, and they both realized the rainy season had finally ended. Soon, inside an ambulance, Woojin woke up and immediately hopped out when he saw the sun. At the same time, Jiho ran toward the house to find his mother. On the other hand, Suah walked toward the tunnel and saw the piles of wood that Woojin had gathered to block her way. She immediately realized that her husband had done this because he didn't want her to leave, but she knew her return was only temporary, and she had to go back eventually. Soon after Jiho found Suah at the tunnel, he quickly chased her and hugged her tightly, begging her not to leave them again. Meanwhile, Woojin pedaled his bicycle as fast as he could, but he fell after nearly getting hit by a car. He then got up and ran the rest of the way, and he didn't care, even though the exhaustion would make him faint again. At the tunnel, Jiho cried and apologized to Suah, saying that he believed she died because of giving birth to him and that he regretted being born. He felt that if he hadn't been born, she would have lived a long life. Soon after, Woojin arrived just in time for the final moments, and, as he called her name, Suah slowly began to disappear. Sometime later, while Woojin was getting his medicine, he found a key that led him to the small cabin. As he checked inside, he then discovered a letter from Suah that explained her life before they were married. Back on March 2nd, 1990, something unexpected happened while Suah was on her way to school. She crossed paths with a young man, and when she glanced at him, she was deeply impressed by his handsome face. It was then revealed that the young man was Woojin. Then, Suah was secretly happy because they ended up sitting right next to each other in class. Later, when she asked Woojin to write in the school yearbook at the end of the school year, she immediately left because she wanted to see what he had written. But then, she realized that she had accidentally brought his pen with her. She knew that she needed to return his pen, but she was too shy to reach out to him. Then, when Suah was 25 years old, she finally received a phone call from him, and she felt incredibly happy at that moment. Even when she acted cool when she returned his pen, she was actually smiling behind his back when Woojin asked her out. Suah also explained that the moment when Woojin thought she already had another man in her life, that man was nothing more than a friend giving her a ride, and at that moment, while they were driving, she spotted Woojin on the street and asked her friend to stop so she could chase after him. She was so glad because she realized that Woojin had come all that way just to see her again. She then ran after him, but fate had other plans for her, because as she crossed the road, a car hit her. Then, when she woke up, she suddenly found herself in a train tunnel, and she realized that she had traveled 8 years into the future and met Jiho and Woojin when she was 33 years old. Everything felt strange and unfamiliar at first, yet she fell in love with Woojin all over again. However, once the rainy season ended, she knew that she had to leave them to go back to her own time. Eventually, as Suah left the future, she woke up from a coma after the accident and found herself having been unconscious for 6 weeks. The memories of the future felt so real to her that she eventually tried to visit the places she had seen in her dreams. However, while the locations were real, Woojin and Jiho were not there yet, because in her current time, they hadn't started their family. Suah was deeply confused and decided not to tell anyone about her experience, as she still found it hard to believe that the places from her dreams actually existed in the real world. However, after thinking it over, she realized that her dream was actually a glimpse into her future. She saw that if she married Woojin, they would have a cute son named Jiho and live a very happy life together. However, if that happened, she would die at the young age of 32, and this clearly terrified her, as she did not want to die so soon. She knew that if she chose not to meet Woojin, she would likely marry someone else and change her tragic fate. But then, she wondered if she would be happy if she married another man. In the end, she decided that she didn't care about what was waiting for her in the future as long as she was with the man she loved, and she felt she had to go to Woojin because little Jiho was waiting for her in the future. Because of this choice, she then went to the train station and asked Woojin to marry her. It was then revealed that the letter that Woojin was reading had actually been written by Suah during that very journey. Many years later, Jiho had grown into a handsome teenager who looked just like his father when he was young. At that moment, even though she was gone, it was revealed that Suah had thoughtfully prepared birthday cards for Jiho for every single year of his life. Even in her absence, she found a way to be there for him. True love is measured by the depth of a connection rather than the length of time it lasts, and Suah's story reflected that. When she discovered that her life would be cut short if she chose to marry Woojin, she faced that terrifying choice, knowing that a few years of pure happiness and the chance to raise Jiho were far more precious than a long, safe life without them. Her story teaches us that a life filled with meaningful love is more valuable than anything else.